So I know that a lot of us out here are diehard college football fans, and I know a lot of us are diehard Georgia fans. But I know that a lot of us follow football really closely, but I know there's a lot of us that don't follow recruiting very closely. You know, your team recruiting. Well, I just heard these couple of stats today. I do follow recruiting very closely. 50% of the game is players. If you don't have the players to compete, you ain't got a chance. You know. I heard a stat today from one of the guys I watch on Dog Nation, Jeff Centel, and I had to make a video. I had to share this. This is insane. You know, if you don't follow recruiting, they break the players down into different classes. You got 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, and everything below that. Are the stars everything? Does that mean everything? No. But it's a good indicator. If you look at the NFL draft, if you look at any metric you want to look at, usually guys that are 5 stars pan out to be really great football players. Usually guys that are 4 stars pan out to be really good football players. 5 stars are the elite of the elite of the elite. 4 stars are elite. And 3 stars make up the majority of average college football rosters. With 5 stars are only the top. You're talking about the entire United States of America. Every high school football player in the entire United States of America. 5 stars are the top 32. It's to mimic the NFL draft. 5-star player, you're a top 32 player in the entire nation, in the entire United States. If you're a 4-star player, you're a top 300 player, roughly 300 to 350 in the entire nation. A 3-star player, you're a top 3,000 to 3,500 player. So 5 stars, you're a top 32. 4-star, you're a top 300. 3-star, you're a top 3,000, and the rest is falls below that. The majority of college football rosters, 75% of college football rosters, are made up of 3-star football players. Georgia's defense. Now this, I could take this so many different ways. I really want to talk about how big the offensive line is that Georgia just recruited in the previous cycle, and they just added in last year's class, who he's coming in this year, an offensive lineman that is 6'10", 345 pounds. He's 6'10". But today there's so many different areas I could go to. Like I told my dad the other day, back in the Mark Richt days, Georgia really all SEC football teams, Georgia always had 10, 11, 12 superstars on the field. No matter what year, no matter what era, no matter what team. They always had 9 or 10, 11 or 12 superstars on the field. It's getting to the point. It's not getting to the point. It is at the point. Kirby Smart has built a machine at Georgia. Every single player on the field and the 2 deep, the second string, is a superstar. I heard a stat today on Dog Nation by Jeff Centel. Georgia. Now this is if, and they are the overwhelming favorites. If they were to sign Justice Terry and Elijah Griffin. For those of you that don't know, that don't follow recruiting, Elijah Griffin, they're both kids in the state of Georgia playing high school football right now. One's in Savannah, one's in Manchester. Elijah Griffin is the number 1 defensive lineman in the nation in college football recruiting world. He's the number 1 defensive lineman. Justice Terry's the number 2 defensive lineman. Georgia's the overwhelming favorite to get both of those. Last year's recruiting cycle, Georgia signed the number 1 linebacker. For some reason, his name's slipping me right now. I can't think of his name. They signed the number 1 linebacker. They also signed the number. This is a little side note. They signed the number 1 linebacker. They also signed the number 3 and the number 4 linebacker behind him. Last year's recruiting class, they signed the number 1 linebacker, the number 1 safety in KJ Bolden, and the number 1 cornerback in Ellis Williams or Ellis Robinson. There's so many superstars now you start to get the names confused. This year's recruiting class, they already have the number 1 linebacker signed, Zayden Walker, who plays a slightly different position than the number 1 linebacker they recruited last year. looking like they're going to get the number 1 and the number 2 defensive linemen, which play a little bit of a different technique on the defensive line. They've already signed the number 1 edge player. I mean, in the entire United States of America, in recruiting, all these colleges going out trying to get the best high school talent, the number 1 player at their position in the entire country. They've already signed the number 1 edge player for this year, Isaiah Gibson. Jeff Sentell on Dog Nation today said that if Georgia, and they're pretty much, I mean, it's all but done. If Georgia was to get number 1 defensive tackle Elijah Griffin and number 2 defensive tackle Justice Terry, the Georgia defense in 2026, he said that over 80% of the defense, there's 11 players on each side of the ball. 75 to 80% of the defense for Georgia will be former 5 stars and former number 1 overall players at their position. That's insane. We would have literally 2 defensive linemen on the field at 2 different spots in the middle. It's really there's really only 1 defensive tackle this day and time, but basically they're kind of both considered defensive tackles if there's 4 on the line with an edge player. We would have we would have Justice Terry and Elijah Griffin on the field at the same time, both as defensive linemen, not edge players. We would have, if they get these 2 players in 2025 and 2026, Georgia's defense would have the number 1 coming out of high school, the number 1 defensive tackle, Elijah Griffin, the number 2 defensive tackle in the nation, Justice Terry, the number 1 edge player in the nation, defensive end, in Isaiah Gibson. They would have a number 1 linebacker in Zayden Walker, another number 1 linebacker in the former class beside him, the number 1 safety in the nation, KJ Bolden, and the number 1 cornerback in the nation on one side in Ellis Robinson. That stat was amazing enough in itself. And then Jeff Sentell went on to say this. Not only would pretty much the entire defense, I'm not talking about the entire defense made up of former 5-star and high 4-star athletes. I mean made up of former number 1 players at their position, like former top 10 players in the nation coming out of high school. Not only that, but the entire 2 deep and half of the 3 deep, the entire first string and the entire second string and half of the third string would be former top 100 overall recruits from their respective recruiting classes, either 2024 or 2025, whatever position they play, defensive tackle, defensive line, defensive end, edge, 5 technique, 9 technique, middle linebacker, outside linebacker, Mike, Will, Sam, any linebacker you can play, free safety, strong safety, cornerback, star position. Every single player on the defense, on the first, second, and half of the third string, would be former top 100 football players from 2025 or 2024. They're saying, I mean, you got to get. Georgia just had Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, and Trayvon Walker on the same defensive line. And behind them, Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker. And some cornerback. All of those were first-round draft picks. It was a safety, Lewis Singh. All of those were first-round draft picks. The 2021 defense had 7 first-round draft picks on it. They're saying that this defense Kirby's building right now is going to be even more elite than that. They're saying literally, they just sent off to the NFL Jordan Davis, Trayvon Walker, and Devontae Wyatt. And the greatest defense college football has ever seen in 2021. Held teams to like an average of 6.1 points per game before the playoffs. Total, it was like 13 points a game. They're saying that this upcoming class they're about to sign is the best. I'm not just making this up. They're saying that this is going to be the overall rated. I mean, look at what Georgia's already doing on. Look at how terrifying the defense already is. Look at how terrifying the defense already is. They're getting ready to sign. This is not a rumor. This is not a opinion. This is a fact. They're about to sign the highest rated defensive line, front 7. Defensive line, defensive ends, linebackers. They're about to sign the best defensive front 7 class they have ever signed in Georgia football history. if you're a fan of another team, I know it might seem cute that I'm here on a video talking all this smack talk. That ought to terrify you. That ought to let you realize that you're not beating them anytime soon. Like that's insane. With what they've already done, they're about to sign the number one defensive front seven in Georgia history. I could take it a lot of other areas. You know, the offensive line they just signed. They just signed 6 or 7 offensive linemen last year. 3 of those players were 6'7", 350. 2 of them were 6'6", 350. One of them was 6'10", 340. One of them was 6'5", 335. The average of those guys was 6'6", 350 pounds. They're literally calling them the Great Wall of Georgia. I don't know what else to say. Good luck to all y'all. Good luck. I don't know what y'all are gonna do. I don't know what you're gonna do.